Sonic Mania Plus. Now before you get confused, I am doing the Encore story. Now, I was a bit reluctant to make it its own video, and you all voted that it should be, so here we are. Honestly, Sonic Mania is the only Sonic game so far I would willingly do another Ultimate Challenge video on, and this is the perfect excuse for that. So if you have not watched the first video, please do so, because I am going to copy and paste what I explained in that video to this video. Anyways, here is the Sonic Mania Plus Ultimate Challenge. Ting! Ting! Oh! The rules. I can only play as Sonic, which will be much more difficult because in Encore mode, you have to switch between characters to make it more unique than Mania. I can't collect any of the Chaos Emeralds, which, ironically, I only ever found special stages when I was not trying. But on my normal playthrough, I could not find them anywhere. I can't use of any Sonic's abilities. This includes drop dashing, spin dashing. However, I will be allowed to spin dash because it is not fun to beat this game without the spin dash. So I will allow it. On the topic of no abilities, if I get an elemental shield, I can still use it as a shield. However, I can't double jump, bounce, or charge with it. I can't have another character following me, which is going to be much harder than it was in any of my Ultimate Challenge videos, because if I accidentally find a character monitor throughout the levels and break it, that's an instant restart. So do be careful. No checkpoints, I can still touch them, however, if I do screw up a level, I have to restart the entire level. Weirdly enough, I am only on 1 life. If I die, I have to replay the entirety of Act 1 all over again. And for those instances, I'm just gonna push forward and ignore the rules because the level is already possible, or not. And finally, I cannot kill a Badnik. Now what counts as a Badnik, you might ask? Well, if it's an enemy that I can defeat within 1 hit by curling into a ball and directly hitting them, that then gives off points and releases an animal, then yes, it is a Badnik. Bosses do not count towards this rule. If I give up on a level, I can just make it to the end and proceed with the challenge. Without any further ado, let's start this challenge. We start off our journey after suffering from worse controls that we had in Sonic Forces, and now we have to chase down the Phantom Ruby. Angel Island Zone. Now this level starts like it did in Sonic 3, and we're already at the end of the level. Yeah, this is our first fail of the challenge. We have to either pick Mighty or Ray. And the first time I went with Ray because you only had to use him once, but on the Mighty route there are spikes that you can kill yourself with, so I chose Mighty. Killed him. No wonder why he didn't appear in any more games after this. And then we switch back to Sonic. We then see the corpses of the Heavy Boils, and the Heavy Magician hands Heavy Metal the Phantom Ruby, and we get transported to Green Hill Zone Act 1, but it's the afternoon. I mean, it's just Green Hill, but slightly different. Is this some kind of joke? The bosses are the exact same as they were in Mania mode, apart from just one. And that's already our first act cleared. Green Hill Zone Act 2. Now this level is just as easy as the previous act. This time I would recommend taking the higher path to avoid the enemy-filled lower path. You do still have to be careful with your movements around the enemies, but other than that, just zip line around them. And we make it to the boss, defeat the Death Egg robot once more, and then we jump down, and we are then transported by the Phantom Ruby, and oh boy, I wonder what our next stop is. Hopefully it isn't a Chemical Plant Zone Act 1. You know what, I kind of vibe with Chemical Plant at night. This time I decide why not and chose to go with the lower path and carefully avoid the grabbers, as if they catch Sonic, they will explode. Jump around the spinies and jump over the springs, in which you have to keep moving fast. And then we do the infamous platform room and we're already at the boss, in which it's just another one of those damage boosts past them and spam the jump button, and that's another level cleared. Chemical Plant Zone Act 2. Now here we are introduced to the jumping jelly, again, in which blue slightly bounces Sonic and green is super bouncy. The badniks are thankfully spaced out enough to the point where you're not going to be accidentally jumping into the badniks with all the sticky walls, the levitating bubbles, the pipes. Eventually we make it to the boss where Robotnik is nerfed at Mean Bean. We easily beat Robotnik, and that's another zone cleared. Sonic then jumps through some more pipes and we move on to Studiopolis Zone Act 1. We start with running straight and we have to damage boost past the badniks in order to get anywhere in this level, and it's just mostly the same as it was in Mania mode. Guess the levels go faster when you're actually having fun. Heavy Gunner then comes out and we have to destroy the blue bullets to attack, and that's another act finished. Studiopolis Zone Act 2. This level is not as tricky as it was the first time because I have done this challenge before. There are still some parts where you have to damage boost past enemies to get anywhere. And there's that one pipe section where you have to open the pipe top before the camera badniks get too close to Sonic. But because I had this exact same issue in the Mania playthrough, it wasn't too bad. While the rest of the level is short and sweet, the badniks still have you higher your guard. The Robotnik fight was unfortunately a joke, as always, and that's another level cleared. Flying Battery Zone Act 1. This level starts off with us climbing on monkey bars, and to make sure to avoid the mouse badniks. This time they are in tighter areas that are harder to avoid. The outside section was not too bad, just make sure not to fall to the death pits and you are fine. Make sure to avoid the animal capsules and skip from pole to pole from the next outside section, and be careful near the spike platform things. Damage boost if you have to, and overall this level is easy enough until we make it to the boss, which was already impossible in the Mania playthrough, so it's not going to be any more possible here. So that's our second impossible level. Sonic then falls down the trash compactor, but is saved by the grabber. Flying Battery Zone Act 2. I went down to the bottom path where you have to enter through the trash. Just avoid the spike balls and you will be good. Damage boost through some more badniks if you have to, and the outside sections are a bit trickier. Avoiding the egg bullets from scratch were a bit tricky, especially when the mine enemies, which I will not count as badniks, as they don't meet the criteria of being a badnik. So getting to destroy them was nice. We avoid some more spikes, but overall this level is not too bad. We make it to the Robotnik fight, and a few jumps later, that's another zone cleared. Sonic then jumps down on some hand gliders, and we fly down to the next zone. Press Garden Zone Act 1. Weirdly enough, there was a second hand glider just flying there for some reason. The conveyor belts in this level are bouncy, so be careful not trying to bounce into a badnik. There is another section where you have to damage boost, and there's one moment where you have to spin dash at the wall, so it is a good thing that we are allowing the spin dash for this challenge. After a little bit, we do that one running section, and then we make it to the boss, in which you have to wait until it is stunned before attacking, and that's another level done. Press Garden Zone Act 2. Oh, wow. Dang. I need to vacation here. This is just the perfect environment. Now, this level, I have already routed it to a higher path. We continue going forward, breaking some ice blocks along the way, and once we pass the wood chipper, we have to turn around, and we have to carefully spin dash off of this slope, and jump off at the right time, and land on these sets of Odin's Cradle platforms. Or fail and fall into another path. And we make it to the Heavy Shinobi, in which just attack it when it's jumping. That's it. That's another level cleared. We then head up to Robotnik, who then uses the Phantom Ruby to transport Sonic to Stardust Speedway Zone Act 1. We run and spin through the level until we make it to a corridor where we have to spin dash to get through some more tubes. We free some flowers from its containment and platform on leaves, and the rest of the level was just Sonic running while freeing plants and climbing on them, and then being launched at fast speeds. It's a good thing that the bandits in this level were a piece of cake to deal with though. And then we meet the resurrected CEO of the Hataroos. The boss was not too bad, and that's another act finished. And then Sonic destroys the generator, which kills all the bandits in this level. Sonic, you don't win. Then we hit a future post, and we hit 88 miles per hour, and we time travel. Stardust Speedway Zone Act 2. Wait, I think we went too far into the future. This level was just pure going fast. Getting thrown and launched out of tubes, going through many loops, and getting launched by the rockets and springs. The enemies were thankfully not a problem in this level. We then do a pipe maze, and we're already at the boss. Well, we destroy the Metal Sonic hologram, and we run to a factory where we destroy some Silver Sonics, and then Metal Sonic transforms into Metal Sonic Kai, I think, and we destroy him. And Sonic does not learn his lesson, and one of the bandits pushes the Phantom Ruby away, and that's another zone cleared. Robotnik then sends Sonic to Hydrocity Zone Act 1. The bandits were just as easy as they were in Mania mode. The Hermit Crab bandits are still annoying, with blocking the path of the launching arm. The boats mostly only uses spears as an obstacle, so damage boost past them, and that's really it. The bubbles were just nothing to write home about. Well, the air bubbles in this level were quite forgiving though, so that's nice. The flying torpedo sharks were a bit weird. They don't give off points or free an animal, so I won't count them as a badnik. So that did make things a bit easier. And we make it to the Robotnik boss, in which we have to escape a collapsing section. Then we make it to the Eggmobile, we damage Robotnik a few times, and that's another level concluded. Hydrocity Zone Act 2. The spinny platforms were annoying, and we had to spin dash in some areas due to the water making Sonic too slow. Now this level change made the level much harder towards the end, where there's a ranged badnik, and I have to carefully jump on the ledge while damage boosting, and then barely make it onto the spinning platform. And that's it. We then make it to the boss and Palm Robotnik, and then we do the Sonic 3 Hydrocity Zone Act 1 boss, and then the walls break and Sonic heads out, and we can move on. Mirage Saloon Zone Act 1. An actually unique level to this very mode? No, that's impossible! There are many pinball elements, and thankfully it is separated from the badniks, which were a bit tricky. However, these enemies that roll around at the speed of sound are very annoying. Getting shot out of a giant gun is still pretty cool, though there are even those seesaw things that appear in every 2D Sonic game ever. The boss, though, was just the one from Knuckles' campaign in Mania mode, where the giant caterpillar is throwing parts of its body at the player. You have to hit the head, but other than that, that's another act cleared, and we move on. Dang, this is so much better than Mania mode Mirage Saloon Act 1. Mirage Saloon Zone Act 2, which keeps the momentum of Act 1, and has the same pinball features with the annoying enemies. Just when you think about this level, it's just starting, the level throws you through some piano keys, and you are already at the Heavy Magician, which is not too bad. Still, we quickly deal with the boss, and that's another zone completed. Sonic then jumps into a gun and launches himself, and we can move on. Oil Ocean Zone Act 1. Seeing this zone in the daytime is quite jarring. This zone was alright, but still being challenging. The octopus badniks were tricky to get around, the jumping platforms were just alright, and the seahorse badniks were not that bad. And the oil slides... Alright, Sonic, just hope you don't get lit on fire. Jump on the platforms, avoid the spikes, go through these pipes or whatever, avoid the badniks, and we make it to our next boss, in which we just spam the attack button and we destroy the robot. And did Sonic ever learn anything from Mania mode? Well, we have an entire oil factory being burned. Oil Ocean Zone Act 2. We need to make sure that we set the pulley things off, or else Sonic will suffocate to death. The badniks, while still being tricky, were still fair. The pipe things were not too stressful, and the air got so bad to the point where I had to book it into a submarine. And the platforming does feel a bit awkward for a Sonic game, and taking notes from my previous playthrough, I avoided this enemy by spin dashing, and we make it out of there, and we make it to the boss, which is just the Sonic 2 Oil Ocean boss, but not really. And that's another section cleared. The submarine then decides to fly to a floating island? I don't know. Lava Reef Zone Act 1. The Rexen are pretty annoying to deal with, as you have to jump on their backs and carefully avoid hitting them. And the exploding badniks do not count, as I'm not directly hitting them. I mostly avoided the metal leg platforms because they may destroy badnik. The poison badniks are still just as annoying as ever, and the platforming in this level was really fun and enjoyable. Though towards the middle, you are going to want to take the higher path because the poison badniks do get a bit out of control. After some more careful platforming, we make it to the boss, where all you have to do is wait, then attack, and that's another level complete. And we head down to the elevator spin dash thing. Lava Reef Zone Act 2. I had already planned a set route to make everything work. First, you have to take the lower path for a change, because once again, the poison badniks do get out of control at a certain point during the higher route. Once we make it to the conveyor belt section, we have to go under the sloped one to reach a hallway with exploding badniks, so I hope you are prepared with some rings. Then immediately spring up, and we do some platforming with some enemies, and those spike shooting things, and the swing pull things. Make sure to prepare a elemental shield and navigate through the moving platforms that can crush you, then go past the poison badnik by damage boosting, and you will slowly lose your rings, but you will not die instantly, which is nice. Then, while poisoned, we have to navigate through fire, but eventually the poison will wear off and we make it to another damage boosting section, which got tricky. But we do a few more platforming segments and we make it to the heavy rider and we just attack multiple times, and that's another zone cleared. Metallic Madness Zone Act 1. The badniks were a fair challenge, and the platforming in this level is just really good. The crusher platforms were fast enough to not be tedious, but were slow enough to be fair. And having to go into a background of a stage is still a really cool 2D video game mechanic. We already make it to the boss, and it's the Sonic 1 final boss. The pinch mode was a bit more interesting though, but the egg crusher is done, and that's another act cleared. Metallic Madness Zone Act 2. This stage is just as good as the previous one. The bomb badniks were fun to get around. Sonic then becomes a little silly creature. And what is great about the small sections was that there were not many badniks, which is a nice change of pace. And we are already at the boss. You have to destroy the mini Robotnik capsules, which take you multiple hits to defeat, so I will not count them as badniks. But we defeat the mini Robotnik capsules, and we win the Robotnik, and we resize, and that's another zone cleared. We take a look at the distance to find our final destination with lightning striking for dramatic effect, and we can move on. Titanic Monarch Zone Act 1. The turtle-blowing badniks were a bit tricky to get around because I did not want to jump and get flung into them, and so the badniks that launch missiles can get a bit stressful. The electrical badniks can get stressful in many instances, but be patient and you will get past them pretty easily. We ride the egg robo suicide machine, and we go through a trampoline haven. And at this point in the level, you are mainly going up. So do be careful when launching off of orbs, because if you fall, you have to do that section over again. The rest of the level has you carefully climbing the base by launching off of orbs and onto springs, which eventually we make it to the boss, which is just a Sonic and Knuckles boss, but the second phase is not as hard. And that's another act finished. The elevator breaks, and we can move on to the final level of this challenge. Titanic Monarch Zone Act 2. Now, for the finale to this game, this level does not disappoint in a disappointing challenge. With having one life, I died a couple of times and had to restart Act 1, which got annoying quick. We launched ourselves off of the egg rowboat cart, and we make it to a room where we can choose which part of the level we want to tackle. I will be tackling these sections of the level from hardest to easiest for reasons explained in the Mania mode video. So instead, we will start with the heavy shinobi section. You have to avoid hitting the trampolines and the hug badniks, which are a menace in this section. The voltage badniks has you go to the very right where the springs are, and you have to quickly go to the left and then jump onto the platform and then damage boost past the voltage badniks. Then quickly scale the platforms before missile badnik shoots its shot, which I have always failed at. Then you have to launch from this orb in between the gears, and this is the hardest part of the level. You have to have at least one ring when you are doing this section. You have to manipulate the spring's spawning position, and then you have to get on top of it to attempt to jump over the hog badnik, in which then you have to keep on running, but we make it to the end of that section, and that's 1/4 of the level clear. My next section is the heavy gunner, in which you have to deal with lots of missile badniks, and you have to manipulate the platforms to go higher. And you have to launch yourself to the spikes to avoid hitting the hog badniks. Then you have to launch off of more orbs, but that is half of the level already done. And it will get easier from here. The next section I completed is the heavy magician section, where you have to platform off of trampoline, springs, and orbs after another egg robo speeder launch off of more orbs, and that is 3/4 of the level complete. The heavy rider section is by far the easiest one of the bunch, as all you have to do is run and platform, and this section is gonna be over pretty quickly. Then a portal opens up, and this boss is its own separate level, even when restarting the level. So if I do have to restart for any reason, I can without having to restart the entire act. Now, all we have to deal with is the final Robotnik. Hope this is not a repeat of the Mania mode final boss. Well, that was underwhelming. Sonic leaves, and the Phantom Ruby, and Robotnik sneaks away, and then Heavy Metal comes in and takes the Phantom Ruby, and then taunts us with the Chaos Emeralds, and that's it. Oh well. That was the Sonic Mania Plus Ultimate Challenge. Well, now that we have played Sonic Mania at night, it is time to answer the question, can you beat the Sonic Mania Ultimate Challenge? Unfortunately, no. Angel Island is impossible to beat as just Sonic, and I could not beat the Flying Battery Zone Act 1 boss, as usual. And overall, this was the least exciting Ultimate Challenge video because I have done this before. But you all told me to make it its own video, so you're welcome. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next month.